Set 15 GK technical question and answers. Answers are highlighted in green. Question 1. What are ad hoc requests in clinical trials? Now, these ad hoc requests are those requests which are made outside the predefined statistical analysis plan. So, say for example, I am conducting a clinical trial study. So, I have a protocol, and after that protocol, I have a very defined, precise, detailed statistical analysis plan. Now, the statistical analysis plan has been written, and the table listings figures are generated based on these SAP. Right now, even after submitting this table listings and figures, the interpretation is not up to the mark. Meaning, like say for example, the results are not able to give a clear picture as to what needs decision needs to be taken. So in those scenarios, what happens is the sponsor or the client will tell you to give some ad hoc request, like which is not there in the statistical analysis plan, which was not agreed upon and which was not even finalized. So these requests are not in statistical analysis plan, but they are outside, which are unplanned, unscheduled, right? So in these scenarios, what happens is the financial and the revenue also changes, because whenever we conduct any clinical trial, the revenue is set based on the statistical analysis plan, how many table listings and figures that we are going to generate and we are going to submit. Now, if such kind of ad hoc request comes from any sponsor or client, obviously it's an extra work that we are doing outside the agreement. In those scenarios, even the financial and the revenue also needs to be set. Now, when are they required? Now, these additional informations, they are needed when they are conducted after the database log, often in response which are urgent queries, regulatory questions, or safety concerns. So like I said, for example, suppose we have an oncology trial, the regulatory people, they have certain questions, like I want to check whether, like, such kind of patients are there in specific subgroup, whether age or covariate analysis or something kind of that. So those kind of urgent queries that needs to be submitted. In those scenarios, these ad hoc requests are required. Also, if there are any safety concerns, like say for example, I am having too many serious adverse events, but the listings and tables, they are not giving the correct picture or not giving the overview as to how many tables and listings they were presented, the right information is not there. So what happens is the regulatory people or the FDA or the sponsor, what they will do, they will twist the questions and they will twist the request in such a way that they get the required answers. So in those scenarios, these ad hoc requests, they come even to understand the safety point of view. Now, why are they required? Now, they are required to address any unforeseen needs, clarify specific findings, support decision making, or provide supplemental evidence for efficacy and safety assessment. Like I said earlier, say for example, the specific findings are not up to the mark, not able to make the decision, like whether, like, we need to move ahead with this clinical trial, or we need to move ahead with this medical treatment, or what needs to be done, should we approve it or should we not approve this particular clinical trial. So in those scenarios, what happens is these kind of ad hoc requests will come, and those needs to be worked upon so that the sufficient evidence is provided for the safety and efficacy. So whatever table listings and figures that you have submitted, the evidence is there, but no, but we need the additional also evidence so that it becomes on a safer side. So in those scenarios, these are required ad hoc request. Question 2. How many derived datasets you can generate in one day? Now it again depends on the complexity, typically 1 to 3 moderately complex datasets per day. Now this again depends on skillful set people, whatever the specific resources having. Suppose even if you are a newcomer, at least one data set you should be able to derive, you should write the programs. But if it's a complex kind of data sets, then even an experienced person can also take more than one day, right? So it depends on the complexity. and also it depends on resource to resource and skill set to skill set. But these questions they generally ask in the interview, so I'm just trying to share like how you can present your answers if these questions come during the interview. Now next is how many SDTM datasets you can generate in one day. Now it again usually depends on simple to moderate. If these are simple, I can generate 4 SDTM datasets. If these are complex or moderate, then I can generate 2 SDTM datasets. Then again, if the model is complete complex, like say mapping is complex, right? So in those scenarios I may be able to work on one SDTM dataset. So this is how you can give the answer justification in a diplomatic way whenever such questions comes in the interview. Now, how many Adam datasets you can generate in one day? Typically 1 to 2, as Adam creation requires more derivations and traceability checks. Because what happens, see, ADSL you can generate or you can create it in one working day. It's a simple one record per subject kind of data set, right? So it becomes very easy provided you have all the formulas, derivations, and you have the traceability, you have checked the data properly and there are no issues in the data. So in those scenarios it can take one day to complete ADSL. But like say for example I have an ADLB which is into laboratory. So in those scenarios what happens is you need to check the traceability of the units, standard units, then the local units, and then you need to check the local vendor and the central vendor. You need to combine the data, you need to adjust the unscheduled visits into the proper scheduled visits. So in such scenarios you may take around 2 to 3 days when you're working on laboratory data sets, right? Question 3. Can you work as production and validation programmer simultaneously? Yes, you can work as production and validation simultaneously in clinical trials, but it is not generally recommended because production and validation they work together as an independent entities, and the quality control requirements, production and validation roles are usually separated, right? Just to ensure that there are no bias, and it ensures that the data integrity is maintained and the transparency is maintained. Now say for example I'm having a specific data set and I'm trying to do the validation. So if I sit with the production person and you are sitting with the production and the validation both, and together, and they are discussing and they are validating, it does not make sense. Now production person programmer has to independently write its own program and generate the output. The validator needs to write an independent program and generate the output. Then the validator's responsibility is to ensure that the outputs are matched. If there are any disagreements or discrepancies or mismatches, then you need to sit together and you need to try to find out where the issue is, whether it's the issue in the production level or at the validation level. It's not necessary that the validator program, whatever that person has written, it's going to be 100% correct. The validator can also be go wrong, and so it becomes very essential that both agreement is really required in a peaceful way. So production and validation they have to work independently as per the quality control requirements, right? And if they ask you the question, can you please explain with the real scenario if you can work as production and validation programmer? So you can share your own experience. Say for example I can work on production and validation programmer simultaneously provided those are different two projects. So say in one particular project I am into production side, and the another project which is into the validation side with some other client. So that is possible, right? But I cannot work as production and validation programmer simultaneously. The answer would be no if if you're working in the same clinical trial study. So in the same project you cannot be the production programmer for the demographics and also the validation programmer for the demographics for the same study. So in those scenarios you can justify your answer if these questions come during the interview. Question 4. How to validate bulk pages of listings with efficiency during stringent deadlines. Now, I have seen many scenarios where in most of the companies, like, you will have more than 1,000 table listings and figures. You will have 2,000 table and listings and figures. Now, these are bulk pages. Okay, now there is no time. So, like, say, for example, your project manager is saying you have only 1 working day or 2 working days to validate the entire 2000 pages of listings or tables, right? And there is no deadline or extension of deadline. It's a very stringent and a very short kind of a deadline. So in those scenarios what you can do is you can use the spot checking. Okay, you can just randomly spot check whether, like, whether it's a career with risk based sampling focusing on critical variables which are related to efficacy, right? You can apply even the automated compare tools if you have written any programs or excel sheets or something like that, and you can validate against source data for key records. So you can do all these things. Then how to validate bulk pages of tables with efficacy during stringent timelines. So even in this scenarios what happens is when you're conducting with the tables and you have a bulk pages of more than 1,000 to 2,000 pages, so in those scenarios you can prioritize the key endpoints, like say what are the efficacy and the safety analysis point, or the objective is more important priority, right? Because based on that only the decision would be made whether we need to approve the this particular medicine in the market. So in those scenarios you can prioritize the key endpoints which are there, especially the efficacy. Then you can check the summary statistics, that n, mean standard deviation. Then cross check with adam data sets. Just use automated output comparison tools. You can just verify totals, like say totals should match the row total, column total. If you are presenting, then percentage, you can just randomly check if it is working in one column or the one row, then it needs to be matched in the other rows. And the derivations on the sample page, well, it's quite challenging to work if you have a bulk pages to review and there is no time given. So in such scenarios it becomes quite challenging, like you can use all these features, automated compare tools, you can verify total, spot checking, prioritize what needs to be done, and you can cross check with adam data set. So these are the only ways that you can validate in much shorter time. Question 5. How to resolve any disagreement between production and validation programmers? Well, disagreement will always be there in some way or the other between the production and the validation programmers. Now, if these two people they have some ego clashes, then that's a different question that I will answer, how to deal with the ego clashes kind of situation. But here let's focus on the question which is related to disagreement in the technical part. So if there is a disagreement between the technical part, what you can do is you can, both of you can sit together and review the specifications independently, and you can check the source data and then programming logic together, right? If this disagreement is not dissolved or it's not getting resolved, the only solution is to involve a lead or a statistician if needed. Now this lead or a statistician will act as a mediator. So the production programmer will convey his message from his side, and the validation programmer will convey the message from his side, right? And the lead has to listen to both of them. Okay, lead may take some time whether to investigate as to what needs to be done and what is correct and what is wrong, right? So if the lead is the correct person to identify what is right and what is wrong in terms of, like, what needs to be delivered as per the protocol and the statistical analysis plan, in those scenario lead will act as a mediator, and that lead will guide as to, like, how to resolve these disagreement, and then those solution will be given. And anyways production and validation programmers, they have to listen to lead and they have to work accordingly. Now if the disagreement turns to conflict, then how it should be resolved? Now like I said, like the disagreement turns to conflict because of ego clashes, like whatever you say, I'm not going to do it, like what I'm saying is completely right. So in those scenarios what happens is, the opposite person is bit stubborn, so it becomes very difficult to work with such person because the conflict has arisen due to ego clash. So in those scenarios, the only way to deal with such people is to escalate to project leader manager, because you explained a specific thing and you are right, and the person is not listening, and he or she is creating, like unnecessary delaying the work. So some people they don't listen, so you have to escalate to lead manager, and you need to discuss the facts objectively, and you need to document the agreed resolution, right? So in those scenarios, the only way is to escalate or complain to his or her manager. Only then people they realize and they understand. So that's the only way to solve the ego clash. Now, should the disagreement or conflict impact the delivery of data sets and TLFs to client? Well, ego clashes will be there in some way or the other, but whenever you're working in any organization, your ego should be left outside the company. When you enter the company, there should not be any ego or any dominating kind of or a demotivating kind of characteristics from any person. It could be even leader manager. That person should not demotivate or have ego or something. So these kind of soft skills which are there, it impacts the work as well. In some way or the other it will impact, may not be now, but in future it may impact. So in such scenarios, the only solution is to work in a professional way, interact only whatever that is required, discuss only related to your work, related to your pattern, and communicate only that much that is required, and don't discuss any crap. Because what happens is, if you talk too much and if you discuss too many things, it will lead to very different kind of scenario. So in those scenarios, whenever there is any tight deadlines or delivery, you communicate only that much that is required, and you discuss only work related issues and behave professionally, so that you do not go any way wrong. So these issues should not affect or impact the delivery of data sets, because client is priority, and whatever the agreement is done with the timelines, that at this specific timeline I'm going to submit this work to the client, so it has to go. Just because of your fight, your ego clash, your misunderstanding, or your disagreement, a client should not suffer, right? Client is interested only in business, and client is only interested in work to be done with quality, and productivity needs to be seen, right? So without any further delaying any agreed timelines, you should resolve these issues, and it should not impact the delivery. Question 6. If the client is unhappy with the teamwork, then what steps should be taken? Now, again, the team has worked hard, but the client is not happy with the way the team is going. So, in such scenarios, what steps needs to be done? You can acknowledge the concerns, like say, issues and concerns will always be there, and there is no team perfect in this entire world. In some way or the other there will be some issues in the team, but you need to find out like what is the issue in the team. You need to acknowledge those concerns, then need to analyze the issues. Okay, this is the issue with the team, then how can I analyze it? Then you can implement the corrective actions. Okay, if I do something so and so things, then things might work out, and then you can communicate the improvement plan clearly to the entire team, and then the team has to work accordingly, so that in this short, the client should be happy, business should come, and the revenue should come in the company, right? So this is how you need to take the steps. Now, how can you win back client satisfaction and happiness for the future work after submitting not good work? right? Now the client is not happy with whatever the work that is being given. So how to win back the client? Now you have lost the trust and you have lost the faith in client, right? The client does not trust you and the client does not have faith in you as a whatever the employer, whatever you are. So in those scenarios you need to deliver the improved quality and with efficiency, right? There should be no errors in your outputs consistently. It is not that okay, this month I did not give any I did not give any errors in the outputs, so I should get promotion. But then after getting promotion, the next month you start generating outputs with all the errors. That is not the way. You have to maintain that kind of consistency, that your error free output should be there consistently in whichever work or whichever project that you are working. You need to maintain proactive communication, like say for example, if there are any issues in the data queries or any resolution or any risk related to the team, or whatever the major points that you see in future, so those needs to be communicated to the client. Now if you don't communicate that to the client will think that you are working on the project, you know in and out of the situation, and you did not tell me at the right time. So what happens, the entire project suffers and the client is not happy. So you always need to ensure that you win back the client's satisfaction, and also whatever the expectations which is there in quality and the timelines, you need to ensure that you exceed that, right? Quality and timelines you are maintaining, the client is not happy. So to win back his happiness, you have to work more, you have to work much harder, and consistently you have to produce outputs which there are no errors. And any situation that you see in a specific study, that you see that okay, this is the risk and this is the impact that will have in future, you communicate at the right time, because you may not know at what situation that you, if you don't communicate properly, then things will go in different direction, right? So in short, the client will not happy, and if it's not happy, the business will not come, your company will not run, and then obviously, like it will impact even you also. So it works like a cycle. So if a client is happy, business will come, revenue will come, and the work will keep coming in the office. Question 7. Can you work on both specifications and a datasets creation simultaneously? Well, it is possible, but it is not the ideal practice that we see, right? In most of the companies, specifications, they are just the guidance for dataset creation. So the first thing that you need to do is generate or create specifications, and based on that you generate or develop the dataset. Now what should be created first, specifications or first datasets? Now specification should be created first to ensure clarity, consistency and traceability. Now what happens is, whenever you're working with any company or any therapeutic area or disease, the very first thing is, even if it is a non-CDISC study, you still need to develop these specifications based on the derived dataset template, right? So in those scenarios, what happens is, the specifications that you have developed, you need to communicate to someone, so that whatever you have developed, whether you are on the right track, whether it is the correct thing what you are doing. So in those scenarios, you need a second person to review that whatever you have done is right? So it could be the internal lead or the internal manager who can review the specifications, or it could be the sponsor. You submit the first draft of specification to the sponsor will go through, then whatever issues that they see in that specific file, they will review and they will send you the comments, right? So that measures the traceability, consistency and clarity. So sponsor will also come to know, okay, specifications are quite clear, the formula is perfect, and this is how, like we need to work. So in those scenarios, it always better that you keep a second reviewer. It could be internal review or it could be the external review to the sponsor or the client. Now please explain with an example. Well, you can share your experience wherever you are filled in any organization, so you can explain with your own experience. Question 8. Why ADSL is not a BDS structured dataset? Please explain the rational reason. Now, ADSL is a subject level analysis dataset and it is not a BDS, right? Because this dataset has one record per subject, right? With mostly the demographics, treatment, key analysis flags. Now, whereas BDS is a multiple records per subject, per time point, per visit, then per parameter, then per group, then per strata. So that list is endless. So BDS is a very different structure and ADSL is a subject level analysis data set. Question 9. What are local and central laboratory vendors? Now, local labs, they test samples near collection sites, right? Central labs, they are those, they test all samples in one standardized facility. So, in central labs, you will have the facility in such a way that whatever they are testing the samples, they will mention all the units in standardized units. Whereas the local labs, they don't have those specific instruments. Their equipment is not up to the mark where they have the feature of converting it to the standardized units. So what happens is these local labs, they will test samples with whatever the facility or equipment that they are having, right? That is the reason whenever you work in any therapeutic area and therapeutic disease, the laboratory vendors, they are like, it's really messy to work with them, because local, they will give you some local units, they are not standardized, whereas central vendors, they will give you standardized units. Now when you get separate data from two different vendors and you have to combine, it becomes a very daunting and a very challenging work, like, to maintain everything in one unit when converting all those parameters, right? So that's how it is. How should they be managed in order to maintain consistency between their laboratory results? Now you can use harmonized protocols, you can use standardized units, ranges, cross validation, and regular data reconciliation. So like I said, it's a very daunting and a time consuming job, because it is not programmers responsibility to convert those non-standard to standard. So whatever data we are getting from vendors, it is their responsibility to ensure that they give us it converted into the standard units, and our job is only to do the programming. Now if we sit and do all this data manipulation and conversion, then when are we going to do the actual programming work, right? So this also, it consumes lot of time, and it's a very daunting job to work even with the laboratory vendors. But you can use some tools. If you have used harmonization and you have reconciled data, and if you know the units and ranges of all the parameters, then and if you know how to manage it, you can work consistently, and else you can keep some other member, who can help you in converting all these things. So you can explain with an example by sharing your own experience if you have worked with any um, real world scenario. Now if you are a fresher in those scenarios, you may not be able to share your own experience because you don't have any practical experience. So if you are a newcomer, you may not be able to share your practical experience, but you can explain in a therapeutical way, right? Like say theory way, like you just convey some story and you can explain that okay, these are the possibilities, this can happen, but I haven't worked on it. Provided if I get a chance, I will get a more visibility on how these things work. So in those scenarios you can give the answer. Question 10. Can you handle and work simultaneously on more than 5 projects at a time? Well, you can work on more than 5 projects if you are a good planner. It requires the strong prioritization, the how you are managing the time and how you are allocating the resources. right? So in those scenarios, it becomes even challenging, where the very first thing is you need to plan. The second thing is you need to prioritize which project needs to go first. You find out that, based on that you manage the time. Okay, in this much time I should complete this much work. So once you have achieved that, and whatever the available resources that you're having, skillful, unskillful, whatever different types of resources that you're having, you have to manage with them, because there is no time, right? So if most of your team have resigned, then how to manage all the projects at a time? Now it could be a situation that you just joined a company, and then you come to know that most of your team members have resigned and they have all left the organization, and everything has come to you, right? Now again, this is a very challenging situation. So in such scenarios, what you can do is, whatever resources that you are there with you, who are there in the organization, with them you can sit and you can reassign the task based on the priority. Whatever, you can make the request for additional resources. Now giving you resources for any project is the management role. The only thing, as a programmer, you can just convey the message, or you can just request for giving the additional resource. Now it's the company's management decision to ensure whether they would like to give you resource, or whether they would like to hire some people, because that is the out of your control. You cannot control that, you can only request. The management has to understand, and that what resources needs to be given. Again, you can streamline the processes. Whatever processes which are there, you keep up to the mark, and only that much. Don't do extra work. Like whatever that is given to you in that specific task, do only that much. Don't overdo it, or don't put your own ideas. If you put your own ideas, you do and that, so you are increasing our workload. Don't do that. Whatever is there, you just mention that, and you just finish that piece of work. And then you can maintain your clear client communication on timelines. Then you can communicate to client like, okay, so and so resources have resigned, and these are the number of resources that we are having. So based on the availability, the task have been reassigned, and we will ensure that we will complete all the work on time at so and so date and so time. So you need to also ensure that you're communicating properly to the sponsor and the client, just to ensure that you win back the sponsor and the client confidence. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a feedback comment mentioning any topic that you want me to make a video. Looking forward for a positive response. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a feedback comment. Many thanks for your support and having great connection.